In 2006, I had the privilege of taking a small team to not 4 hours away, but more like 34 hours away to a little nation called Sri Lanka, right here from Church on the Ridge. A tsunami had come through there and devastated the island, and we wanted to do some relief work. And I had the privilege of being in a place where the people who are going to talk to us today have committed their life. And we're there during that time and serving and ministering. And we got to see some of the works that they were doing to support and serve people who have gone through just natural disasters that we our last natural disaster, Mount St. Helens blew. Anybody remember that? 1980, yeah. Yeah, and we, in our church, we sent some shovels over and tried to, shovel some stuff and do some things, but that wasn't quite the same when 60,000 people are killed in just a few moments, and just the devastation. So we get to hear from a family that is now part of our church. The pastors are not, the missionaries are not, but their family is. In fact, Cincy was playing bass this morning, and they're going to have a baby here soon. But I got to get to meet them. I never met them when I was in Sri Lanka, which is really a bummer. But they knew my brother who was serving there, and I want to invite you guys up. 40 years of ministry and almost 40 years of marriage, and they're going to talk to us today about how you do ministry and marriage and how you walk this thing out. What does it look like? And they're going to share their story with us. So I want you to welcome Roger and Therese Kohlmeyer. God bless you guys. Give them a hand. Come on. What a privilege.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Charlie. It's great to be here. And we worship at Church on the Ridge now, and we're so glad to be here and getting to know so many more of you as the days go by. Just want to tell you that how did a young gal born in Tacoma, graduated from Western Washington, any Vikings here? There are some, okay. And graduated from Western Washington and then come to Sri Lanka at the age of 23. You know what? This book has something to do with it. It's an amazing book. It'll change your life, I guarantee you. You know what? I used to see her reading her Bible every day. I used to see her journaling. She loves to journal. We have so many journals of hers. I don't know how we're going to bring it back from Sri Lanka, but we've got to, because there's a huge story there. And she would write, and I'll tell you something, if you spend 14 minutes in this book every day, it'll do a number on you. It'll change your life completely, I guarantee you. And that's what I want to challenge you to do. You know what? As we tell our stories this morning, we just want you to lean in. And as you hear these stories, I pray that you will say, how can I be a part of his awesome story? Because all of us are called on mission, not just those who go abroad. That's missions. This is mission. And we're all a part of it in the Snoqualmie area. Boy, I can't even pronounce it properly. I had to think a little bit carefully before I say that. But in this very valley, that we will share the wonderful love of an awesome God who was the greatest missionary in all the world. And so, let's hear the story as Therese starts it off.
So we're so happy to be able to be with you guys this morning and also to share not only our story, but the things that God has been teaching us and challenging us and continues to do so. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk through some scriptures. We're going to walk through a bit of our story and also share with you the challenges, the difficulties, and how we've had to grapple with this, hearing from God for ourselves and then hearing from God as a couple. Because relationally, that's also a big challenge. Are we on the same page? Yeah, you also have the same challenges like us? Well, we're going to start where it all began. And where this whole walk with Jesus all began for me was because my roommate at Western decided to be on mission at campus. Crazy, no? When you're living in the dorms, you fill out these forms. We did not have tech. It was a piece of paper, right? You tick it off, and they try to match you with someone, right? So my roommate decided that she would pray and take on the challenge to just fill it out according to what her likes and dislikes were, like are you a morning or evening person and stuff like that, and just take whoever she gets and not just have one of her friends that were Christians as a roommate. So this roommate, Janine, got me. Now you can see her picture come on the screen right now. The lady right next to me, she's a nurse at Providence delivering babies every day. So she was in nursing school at Western. And we were roommates. But the whole fact that she chose to be on mission where she was at changed my destiny. How about you? Are there people that were in your life or are in your life that you were a part of either changing your destiny or they changed your destiny? Well, Janine was that person. Now, Janine's not this awesome, amazing preacher. Janine is not this super outgoing person. In fact, in some ways, we are night and day difference. I'm kind of the party, and she's kind of the quiet person. So when you go to Western and you think that Western's the party place, right? And then you get a quiet person as your roommate, you're kind of wondering what's going on. But you know what? Her life spoke so loud that it was the first time, although I grew up in a very religious family, went to Mass every day of the week, you guys. 6 out of 7 days I was at church. I won the religious award in graduation from high school. Crazy. I didn't know Jesus. The first time I had to grapple with the reality of my faith is when I moved in with Janine. And Janine lived differently. She made decisions differently. She had different friends. And she had a heap of friends that also immediately included me in. Isn't that crazy? Because I didn't have friends when I first went to college, right? A lot of my good friends, we decided to split up and go chase something else, right? We've been in school together, some of us, for 12 years. But Janine's life and the way she lived made me think. So when she decided to start including me in her life and inviting me into places where she went, and I followed her, I saw that it's not just Janine. And on my first Friday night on campus at Western, what do you do as a freshman? Party. Yeah, right? But before I went, my roommate said, before you go out, would you just come with me for an hour and a half and be with my friends? Then you can go do whatever you want. So I said, sure, I'll go with you. It was early, 7 o'clock, right? I walked into the largest lecture hall on the campus at Western Washington University, and 450 students were praising God on Friday night. I just sat there and said, what am I missing? I have never seen anything like this. And they had a band, which I wasn't used to anything like that. Band in those days, we're talking in the 80s, you guys. But it made me think. I just remember sitting there in that hall just going, this is a part of Western I know nothing about. It wasn't promoted to me. No one told me about this. And yet my roommate, Janine, my quiet, mild-mannered Janine, was all in. And I didn't know what was going on. You know what? Because of Janine's influence in my life, I got to where God brought me into a destiny that was far beyond whatever I ever thought or dreamed in my wildest dreams, you guys. Janine's life challenged me. And her influence gave me something that offered a change and a trajectory that God has never stopped using, influencing, and moving me towards. Janine showed me that, you know what? The Bible's not just to do Bible quiz with, and it's not just to sit on the rack, and it's not just to take for religion class, but that it has actual stuff in it that gives us direction for life. And when you go to college, you want direction, right? I needed it. I'm the 9th of 11 kids from a big family in Tacoma that loved me to pieces. I loved them to pieces. Mom and Dad were awesome. But I didn't have Jesus. I didn't have what Janine had. I didn't have this direction that my roommate did. And then she explained to me from Galatians 2:20. She gave me this verse that says, I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live the life I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave his life for me. I was like, what? I live a different life? There's a different life out there? And that was the choice that was given to me. Actually, the girls on the dorm invited me to a Leon Patillo concert. And the only reason I went was because Leon Patillo was a drummer for Santana, and I really like Santana, right? But I had no idea that he had a life change, right? So this verse became my verse also. Another one she challenged me with was that 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 7. It says, for I live by faith and not by sight. And when you grow up in a family that has things kind of organized and laid out, 11 kids, but my parents were super organized, right? And we all had opportunity to go to college. We all had like our lives little set out and laid out for us financially and with all the family friends and things. But this whole walking by faith and not by sight was completely foreign to me. Because I'm a person that likes everything organized, laid out, and you can't imagine how many times we redid this outline. Thank you, Betty. Bless you, Betty, for putting up with us. But I learned that sometimes it's okay to just hear God's voice and do something different. The next verse, Philippians 3:7, was another verse that God used and really challenged me with. It says, whatever gains me, I now consider loss for the sake of Christ. Whatever were gains to me. I had lots of opportunity. I had lots of things in my life that God had provided and blessed me with. But it looked like God was calling me to do something different. And he did. He called me to go to this country called Sri Lanka, and if you don't know where it is, don't worry, I didn't either when God told me to go there. You go to India and take a left, small island off the southern tip of India, okay? But you know how God can call us to the most crazy places at certain times and for a certain reason? I have a quick slideshow so you can kind of see that process, you guys. We put together some photographs. Some are kind of embarrassing, okay? But so you see, so this is me. I boarded the plane in Los Angeles, and I was not smiling, you guys. I was actually crying my guts out. Because I knew God had called me to go to Sri Lanka, but that, step like I'm really doing it, you guys, there was no cell phones, there was no internet, there was no way to communicate with home. When you got on the plane, you didn't know when you would ever hear or see anyone you knew. It was a tough go. But God helped me to walk through that because I knew in my heart that he had called. The next slide. What happened 3 years later? That was 86 to 89. God called me to start Lotus Buds Children's Home. I was working with the kids at risk living on the beaches and the streets in Colombo, just south of their commercial capital. And God opened doors for us to start a children's home through the organization I work with. We were a baby receiving home. So this was the first Christmas. We opened in April. Can you see those babies, you guys? And I didn't have a very good hair day because it was really a challenge. At one point, I had 5 babies under 5 months. And I just had one other person helping me with the childcare component. So we did have to hire some more staff. But this was our family picture. In those days, you guys, to get all the kids looking in one way, we didn't have digital, you guys. It took one roll of film to get this picture, okay? And as you see, there's one kid, Sarat. He's playing with Chandi. So his head is like this, but it was the best I could do, okay? At one point, I just had to say, okay, enough is enough of photographs, right? Because these small ones were crawling, so it was crazy. But see, when God calls you to something, I did not know when I stepped on that plane that this was what I was going to do. I had no idea. But God keeps like showing you a little bit more. It's kind of like when you go out, it's hard to get used to a GPS, right, sometimes, because you want to know where you're getting to, but it only tells you the next step, right? Are you like me, like you minimize it and you're like, I want to see the map? And I think that's how it is with God, with us. Sometimes we're trying to minimize it so we can see the whole picture, and it just doesn't show, right? So I had no idea. Then, next picture. Is this awesome hot guy? Don't you love that picture? The 80s in Australia were amazing. Don't you love his hairstyle? Anyways, so Roger will share more of his story, but this is just part of how God was bringing him also into my story. Because I went to Sri Lanka as a single missionary, and I served there from 1986 till 1990 when I only met Roger then. Okay? So it was just kind of a crazy season. Next slide. And that was our wedding. When we got married, Roger is a pastor of the church, so we invited the entire church. The children in our children's home sang in our wedding, except for the babies. I had to get a babysitter because they were everywhere and they would have sat on my lap. So yeah. And then our first Christmas family photo, normally it's a couple. That's us. So that was our first Christmas. We had 17 kids, and the people in the back are all the staff and helpers that we started pulling in because we had a lot of need in caring for these kids, right? Next slide. That's our bio family, which I don't know if you've met Hannah, our daughter. That's why we came to the church on the ridge, is because she and her husband Cincy are part of the church here. And our daughter Ruthie and our son Micah, and we've also adopted Banu. She wasn't adopted yet in this. So we have 4 kids. They're all in this greater Seattle area, going to 4 different churches. And but we had no idea this was our house and time together. Next slide. This was the last day, actually the last weekend of our children's home. And it was a hard thing, you know, when you have things that end and things, but this is our last weekend, so we invited all the kids to come. They're all married, and the kids in this picture are their kids. Do you understand? Now that's the next generation. And so we have from our Lotus Buds kids so far 19 grandkids. Then Hannah, Ruthie and Rima there's our bio kids, had their 20th. Hannah and Cincy will have the 21st. And one of our other kids from here is having the 22 next month. So the generations continue, right? But when one thing closes, God does open other stuff. So this weekend we had all the kids home, and we told them anything in the house that you need for your house, you just take it, because we have to sort the house. So we had all the kids home. It was quite a weekend and a lot of emotion, but we took lots of pictures. Next one. That was Christmas 2019. This doesn't show all the kids, but these are the kids that are in Sri Lanka. We now have kids in nine countries around the world and doing life in different places. So when you saw that first picture with all the babies, you'd never think of this, right? Did people always think of children's home, a whole bunch of little kids, right? They grow up, right? Okay, so this is what happens. Next one. And this is our family. This was right after church on the Ridge, Christmas Eve service at Hannah and Cincy's house. And how God is our kids here, and that's how we ended up here as a part of the church on the Ridge. And the last slide is Roger's and my 32nd anniversary that we just celebrated 2 weeks ago. Because all of this is God's story. You know, all of this is God's story. And God has your story too. Each one of us has a story. And how we walk it, I want to see all your photo albums, all your crazy hair, and all the different stuff that you've walked through with your family. Yeah, we all had weird hair. Remember the big hair days? Yeah. When I went to Sri Lanka, it was all big hair in 1986, right? But the impact of those that influence us can be amazing. Just think of Janine. What if Janine didn't do that? Right? What if Janine didn't choose to do that, and I got some other random chick in the dorm that was party hardy queen, full of fun? Where would my life have been after college? Who do you influence? Who is it that you have influence over, or who do you have influence of? Maybe it's your friends at school. Maybe it's on campus. Maybe it's at work. Maybe it's in your community. Maybe it's just when you go to Safeway, right? There's people that we have influence in. Are we the positive influence? Are we the one that brings the hope in the day? God wants to use us as his influencers. If Janine hadn't influenced me, where would I be? When an opportunity gets a hold of us, what do we do with it? You know, I was going to this campus fellowship, and Operation Mobilization, which is a mission sending organization, came and spoke at our fellowship. And when they were speaking, you guys, I knew Jesus maybe 6 months at this point. But they spoke and they shared about how we could bring hope to people all over the world. And for some reason, it just kept nudging me. When they were done, I went out to the little table outside the door and grabbed one of their maps of the world and just started and hung it in my dorm room next to my bed and just said, God, if you want me to go somewhere, maybe I'll do it. That's how it all started and how God led me in a simple way. So when opportunities came, any missionary that showed up on campus, I was there. I wanted to hear their story. I wanted to go to the missions prayer group, met at 6 a.m., guys. The only time students are free or sleeping, right? When I was finishing my degree, I had some extra space in my schedule, so I started my master's in missions at Fuller Theological Seminary. And those days, there was no online. It was cassette tapes, right? So you get this little book with cassette tapes and hard copy notes, right? And then you have to fly to Fuller to take your test, right? So I had to do my preaching components and everything live at Fuller. But those were opportunities. Have you had opportunities? When things come up, when opportunities are there, and you feel like I should do it, and then we kind of tell ourselves, there's 50 reasons I shouldn't. You know what? God wants us to jump into those things. Also, if it's his deal, he will definitely give you his direction. Because his direction is amazing. He confirmed it. I was working at Canada Beach Christian Conference Center. You guys know about it. It's in, down in Canada Beach, Oregon. It's pretty awesome. But he confirmed it to me when I was there that Sri Lanka was the place. I didn't know about Sri Lanka. I didn't know where it was. I didn't know how I'd get there. I didn't know what I'd do. I didn't know anything, and I was flat broke. You know the year before your senior year? How do you feel? Okay, there's an end that's coming, but I don't have any extra anything, right? But God told me to go then. So it was amazing how God used all of those things to show me not only his direction and confirm it along the way, but to give me opportunity to get to Sri Lanka. I worked at the YMCA for the summer. Graduated in June, worked at the Y for the summer, went to U.S. Center for World Missions in August, and landed in Sri Lanka on October 9th, 1986. How can God do something like that for some chick that grew up in Tacoma, had a great religious background, but found Jesus on Western's campus? How does God do that? He uses influencers, he gives opportunities, and he also confirms that direction. So that confirmation to go to Sri Lanka, I didn't go listen to some prophet that told me to go. I had to hear it for myself if I was going to put my life on the line for this. And I remember asking God to show me God, because if you want me to go, you're the one's going to get me there. I'm a flat, broke college graduate. But if you want to use me, You make it happen.
You're going to see another picture coming up. And when you see that, and when I see that, I wince when I see that. Oh my goodness, is that what I look like? And then, I'm outside an igloo there. I mean, for me, that was a big thing because coming from Sri Lanka and even Australia, where you don't get snow right where you live, it's only on the mountains, I enjoyed taking a picture out of that igloo there. And then that's where I graduated from Bible College at Central Bible College in Springfield, Missouri. But my story goes back to a wonderful lady in my life, my grandma. I used to call her Granny, and she was one wonderful lady. You know what? She used to put me on one knee, my sister on the other, and she would tell us all the wonderful Bible stories. I'm telling you, it was so exciting to hear her tell all these wonderful stories. And you know what? I don't know how many times I said, Granny, would you tell me the story of Joseph again? Would you tell me the story of David again? I don't know how many times I asked her, and she seemed to be so patient, with me, and she'll tell the story again and again and again. And as I heard those stories, they started to form something inside of me. I went to Sunday school as she took me to a little church, a vibrant church that was close to our house. And I grew up in the Sunday school, grew up in the youth group, and it was amazing. But I want to tell you something else about my granny. You know what? There was only one service those days, in our church. And she would go to the service and she'd look around and see who's not there. I hope you will do that. You know what she did? She would go and visit everybody that was not there. And she'll get home so late. My dad, was a person who's organized. He says, we need to get the lunch going and get the table done and move on to dinner. But you know what? You know what my grandma said? She said, Rainsy, I have food that you know not of. Actually, she was fueled with a passion for the things of God. And I loved her so much. And that shaped the call that was coming into my life. At 16, I really felt called of God to want to preach this gospel. And it was so much burning in my heart. And then I migrated to Australia at the age of 17. And while in Australia, you know what I did? I started following the Australian dream. It's not very much different to the American dream. You get used to all these things, the materialistic things that, are in your life. And I remember getting a car, and then I would have gone on that same trajectory, one day a house, one day a holiday home, and all these other things. But you know what? I also got on the bandwagon of traveling. I love to travel. Australians were very travel conscious at that time. And I joined two of my friends, and we went traveling. We must have gone to at least about 30 different countries. It was wonderful. It was great. And when I was in Washington, D.C., something fantastic happened. I met some young people there that were sold out for Jesus. I mean, they were giving their life to Christ. They were making a difference. And I thought to myself, what am I doing? I mean, God called me into the ministry. What am I doing? I'm keeping God's call on the back burner of my life. And I said, God, forgive me. Actually, I said, I surrender. And I surrendered to the Lord. I went back to Australia, passing through Sri Lanka, and encouraged the church there. And then went back to Australia. I worked hard, did 2 jobs. And I saved up my money to come to Central Bible College, and then on to do my master's. And then at the end of the master's program, I got a SOS call saying that the church back home in Sri Lanka that I was longing to go back to needed a pastor. And I said, okay, I'm going. And I headed back. You know what? When you say you're all in, God says, hey, just wait to see what I'm going to do with your life. And He will do that in every one of our lives if you only say we're all in. See, when you say you're all in, the journey begins. Sometimes it's smooth, but I have to be honest with you, most of the time it's a roller coaster. I mean, you're hanging on for dear life almost. And you're saying, God, what do I do in this situation? And you're not sure of yourself as well. But you know what? We go to Disneyland, right? We take our kids there, and they have such a blast. But can you imagine, even moms and dads, you like Disneyland as well, but can you imagine signing up and being all in for God, and it becomes a roller coaster? It's a wonderful journey, up and down and down and out, and it's so great because He does all the changing inside of us. I'd like to take you to a wonderful story in the Bible in Exodus chapter 14 and verse 10. And you know what? The Israelites are facing the Red Sea experience. And for 430 years, they have been slaves. And Moses got a call from God. And Moses was told, bring my people out of Egypt. And so here's Moses. And God gives him a vision. God gives him a purpose. He has a passion. And he steps out saying, okay, I will do it. After all the excuses that he first gave. And then finally, the one-liner was, let my people go. Let my people go. And so here they are facing the Red Sea, and we come now to Exodus chapter 14, verse 10, and this is what it says. As Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching after them. They were terrified, and they cried out to the Lord. Can you imagine the situation that they're facing? I mean, they're looking up, they see the Red Sea, they say, hey, we can't go any further. And then they look behind and they say, look, Pharaoh and his armies are coming after us. And what the Israelites did was they were very sarcastic. They said, what? Were there no graves in Egypt that you brought us here to the wilderness to die? And then, you know, we always told you, Moses, leave us there. We can serve the Egyptians. We'd rather die there than die in the wilderness. And so they were actually grumbling and complaining against Moses. And what does Moses do? Moses says, hey, this is hard for me to handle. I'm going straight into the presence of God. And you know what? That's where he got his strength. That's where it helped him to face the Red Sea experience, which has been a watershed experience for all of us because of what God did through Moses and the people of Israel. And so here were they, you know, facing the Red Sea. And in verse 13, it says, Moses answered the people, do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance of the Lord, which He will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. Now, where did he get that from? He got it from the Lord. He went into His presence. And see, that is the way to face any Red Sea experience in your life. Any difficulty, are you facing an impossibility? Are you facing some situation and you don't know what to do? You don't know where to turn? And you're saying, look, what do I do? Can I tell you? Follow what Moses did. Run into the presence of God. He will strengthen you to face whatever difficulty that is out there for you. And then in verse 15, it says, then the Lord said to Moses, why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on. You know, God didn't give all the details. I mean, here he's at the Red Sea, and God doesn't say, well, this is what's going to happen. I'll give you the whole script. The waters are going to part. There's going to be 2 walls of water there. There'll be some big fish at the end. Don't be afraid. They can't get you because my power is there. I will take you through on dry ground. Are you willing for this marvelous journey? And you know what? God didn't say that. But you know, He gives a step at a time. He gives His directions. And then finally, in 14 verse 16, it says, raise your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea to divide the water so that the Israelites can go through on the sea on dry ground. See, this is what God said. You be obedient, Moses. Just do what I'm asking you to do. You may look stupid holding out that staff over the waters, but you know what? Something wonderful is going to happen. You watch this. People are going to speak about this for generations to come. It's going to minister to people. It's going to minister to the people at Church on the Ridge as well one day. Today. And so this is what he did. He just stretched out his hand. Looked so stupid, and sometimes that's what God is asking us to do. Do something, step out, you know, be all in, and He will do something awesome in our lives. You know what? In 1988, when I went back to Sri Lanka for the first time, after 15 years, I was 7 years in Australia, 7 years in the United States, finished my studies, went back. And you know what? My one desire was to help the pastor that was there. I loved that pastor. He was a great man of God. And you know, I just want to assist him. I'll do anything for him, I said. But you know what? When I got there, he said, the church is yours. Oh my goodness, I got the shock of my life. What am I looking at? Am I looking at, a closed door? Or am I actually looking at an obstacle in front of me? And you know what? As I faced it, I was wondering, what am I going to do? The pastor is leaving, and I have to take over. And then hear this. A few days later was the annual general business meeting, and they were going to vote on a pastor. And I was at that meeting, and you know what? They started calling out names, other names of those that can be the pastor of this church. And I was like, hang on a second. I left America, I left Australia, I've come to Sri Lanka, and is this what I'm hearing? It was so dissonant in my mind, it was conflicted in my mind. I was wondering, what do I do? And I was feeling very uncomfortable, but thank God my name also was there. And then finally the pastor, he said, hey, this is one of our boys, and this is the guy we want to back up. And so everyone said, okay, pastor, we'll follow that. And I thank God we pushed through the obstacle. And I've been there now for 34 years. And it's been a wonderful journey. And with Therese coming and joining me, it's been even better. And it's been a fantastic journey. Then I remember in 2004, the tsunami. 60,000 people died in just a few hours. And you know what? It was a trying time for Sri Lanka. All the foreigners left the country. Life was very hard there. But you know what? In that time, we did so much relief work. There were people that were writing saying, hey, what can we do for Sri Lanka? They contacted our church, they contacted me, and we did so much relief work. And we also built houses for people that needed tsunami housing. And it was an amazing journey. We never knew, so much relief work that could be done. And then we never knew about building houses. But it all came together, thank God. And then finally in 2009, the civil war that lasted for 30 years on the little island of Sri Lanka, it came to an end. And when it came to an end, it was a war-ravaged place. And in the north, there was hardly anything. There was no infrastructure. Everything was broken up, blown up. And what do you do in situations like that? Is it an obstacle? Or is it a closed door? And you know what? God opened a wonderful door, and we opened 15 of our 39 branch churches in the northern part of Sri Lanka. See, this is what God will do if we step out in faith, hear His voice, and run. Now, don't think, oh, it sounds so easy the way you're saying it. Not really. Sometimes you don't know what you're doing. You're just taking a step, wondering, am I going in the right direction? But you know what? What we need to do is to keep walking, and keep walking.
And as we keep walking, hello? As we keep walking, sometimes we get it really right, and sometimes we don't. Are you like me? I just have to tell you, you guys, sometime I got it one time, well, many times, but one time I got it wrong in a big way. So you saw all the kids and they were growing up, right? So what I did was I wrote a grant, because when you work in how I work, you write grants, right? So I wrote a grant for starting the baby wing so that we could start over, right? And that's when tsunami happened. And actually, probably about 6 months before tsunami, I got the grant to start. But because it takes time for things to get passed and plans and all this stuff done, the funds were just waiting in an account, and then tsunami happened and we couldn't build anything right then. And we were out helping children's homes that were affected by tsunami or who had lots more kids because their parents died in the tsunami. So we basically became relief work for other children's homes. That's how we got our kids involved. And I was on the East Coast, and God just said, I have new marching orders for you, and it's not what you thought. And I'll never forget being there, and He said, you're out helping children's homes. This is your new marching orders. You guys, I didn't have any money. I had already got a grant for what I thought was the next thing, right? If you've ever written a grant and you got funding, and then you don't want to do it, what do? It's really embarrassing, right? But I really believe God wanted me to do this. So the grant we received was through a foundation in Gig Harbor. So we were going to the States, and so I went. I remember making that appointment is so hard, right? and saying that God has told us to do something else. So how do you do that? So Roger and I really prayed for it. He prayed and sat in the car and just prayed because I was scared. Like, how do I tell these big guys that do financial grant releases that God told me to do something else, right? And so all I could do was make a list of the things I really believe we were supposed to really do in this season and present it. And so I did. And when I was done, the guy just looked at me and said, "You have the money, use it." Who does that? Right? It was really crazy, you guys, but when God tells you to do something, he makes stuff that shouldn't happen, right? And it doesn't always work that way, but you guys, I got it totally wrong. I had done the whole plan, I actually had the architectural drawings for the new wing, everything was done. But God wanted something else. I had no idea. Faith is being sure of what we hope for, and certain of what we don't see. Hebrews 11:1 has been one of my marching order verses, because sometimes we have to do stuff that God tells us to do, and we have no real way to get it done, right? But that's what it is to walk by faith. And we feel weak, at least I do. I'm a crier, you guys. When I get through really hard stuff, ask the kids, they know. I cry, but we have to keep walking, right? So 2 Chronicles 16:9 has always been another verse that for me has really given me strength, because it says, "For the eyes of the Lord range throughout the earth." That means he could find me in Sri Lanka, right? To strengthen those whose hearts are fully committed to him. God alone could strengthen my heart, you guys. So getting this walk, this hearing from God for ourselves, as well as our ministry, as well as our relationship, our kids, and our life, has always been a real walk of faith. And sometimes we get it a little wrong, but you know, God's grace is pretty awesome. And he has something a lot bigger than maybe that little baby wing on our house. Because now we work with 55 children's homes in 7 provinces, helping enable the highest standards of care for kids that have to be in residential care. I can't do that, guys. I can't do that. But God can do it, and he helps do it, and he leads us in things.
When you're all in and you say the yes, it's wonderful to see what God unfurls in your life. We're going to look at Philippians 3:12 as it comes up on the screen. "Not that I have already obtained all this, or have already arrived at my goal, but I press on to take hold of that for which Christ Jesus took hold of me." Church, I want you to know something. Jesus got a hold of you, and there's a reason. He wants you to be a part of his family, and then to get really challenged to reach out to others and bring others into his awesome family. And so the people in this valley need to know about this wonderful Lord. And he grabs a hold of our lives, and we need to grab a hold of what he grabbed a hold of us for. See, saying yes does not mean you understand everything. Saying yes does not mean you know the story from the beginning to the end. Saying yes does not mean that you have a script and you're going to just roll it out and just complete it. Sometimes it's like groping in the dark. You're not sure. You're wondering, do I take this step? Am I taking the right step? Am I going in the wrong direction? And you know, you keep taking steps of faith, because we are walking by faith and not by sight. But wonderfully, it happens like this, like we're telling you the story now. When we look back, we can see his fingerprints on various parts of our lives. And we knew, hey, that was a right turn. Hey, remember where we didn't do a good turn there, but then God brought us back to the right track. And we thank God for that. See, it almost seems like God gives only a little light, enough light for the first, maybe the second, and maybe the third step. But we don't know anything further. And what he says is, would you trust me? It's like the word of God says, my word is a lamp unto your feet and a light unto your path. But it's only a small distance that the lamp gives light for. And it'll take you, step by step. See, That is what makes this journey so amazing. So amazing. Walking by faith and not by sight. Right now, I'm in a succession plan. And I have young pastors who are taking care of things back home. I have a pastor in the English, Sinhalese, and Tamil congregations. But you know what? I'm having Zoom calls from here. And then when I'm watching the services back home, I feel like, hey, that's not the way to do it. That's not the way I would do it. As though I did it really right. But you know what? What God is saying is, let them be. I will take care of them. I will whisper to them. They have their own journeys to make, and they'll do a fantastic job, even better than you, Roger. And you know, that's a wonderful thing for me to step back, you know, be on the sidelines and to be praying for them, saying, hey, the Lord is there for you. You will make it, and you will do well. And so sometimes, though, it's very hard to stand back and watch what is going on. You want to, you know, do something about it. You want to control things. And that's the worst thing in the world to do. But to release them and to say, Father, take care of them. Take them on that journey. So take hold of why Jesus took a hold of you. And then make it your goal to please Him. As 2 Corinthians 5:9 says, we make it our goal to please Him. Would that be your goal? Would you jump in and say, I'm all in. I say yes to you, Jesus. Whatever the church is doing, jump in. Do whatever you can and reach the valley right here for the Lord Jesus Christ.
You know what? Roger and I have just shared a bit of our story. And a lot of our grappling challenges has been as we continue to walk and trying to hear His voice, not only for ourselves and our ministries, our family, and our future. Maybe you're also at those kind of places in your lives. You know what? God will lead you. It's amazing how He's given us such a ride, a lot of times not the ride we chose, okay? But how He turned that ride that we didn't choose into something to bring His hope, His future, His light, and a changed world to places that were dark and didn't have hope. You know what? God led us. He's still leading us, and He'll lead you. God kept us. He still keeps us, and He'll keep you. Seasons change. Oh, and we are having the biggest change ever. Can you imagine? We have never lived together in America. We've never been here. 37 years I've been in Sri Lanka. But God is leading us too. And maybe you have big life changes and season changes in your lives. But I'll tell you, He's 100% on. And how He leads you, if you follow, your destiny is dangerously awesome. Seasons change. We're not yet done. You know what? If you're not dead, God is not done. So if you have to refire something and relocate where you are and how you're walking with God, we just challenge you. We hope that our stories today have helped you to be encouraged that even if you get it wrong, He can make it right. And even when you're trying to hear Him and sometimes it's not very clear, He's still there talking. We just have to listen. Be encouraged, Church on the Ridge family. Bless you.
I'd like you to do something. Just bow your head and close your eyes. God is speaking to you this morning, and I don't have to do much except invite you to make a decision. Jesus, I'm all in. Maybe you're like Therese was many years ago, not knowing Jesus, and today's your day to say, Jesus, I want to know you. I want you to be who you're supposed to be in my life. I need a God who's real, a God who loves, a God who cares, and a God who will lead me to an awesome future. Some of you have heard God's voice, and you've been fighting with it. God's calling you back to Himself. Hey, let's pick it up from here. Let's keep going. You can't mess it up so bad that I can't fix it. So will you come back to me? Will you do the things that I called you to do at the first? Let's get back on the road again. Jesus, I'm here this morning with my friends, and God, we were all challenged today to see the life of a beautiful couple who said yes. We're all in. And God, you carried them through the ups and downs and the reality of life. God, we want to put our hands, I want to put my heart in your hands. I want to put my life in those hands of a God who's so good. Lord, let me stand up and do the silly stuff, do the difficult, and I'll watch you do the impossible. Help me today, Lord. I give my life to you. I am yours. In Jesus' name, amen. If you prayed that prayer and you're going, I don't know what to do, I'm not sure where to go at this point, drop me a note, charlie@churchontheridge.org. We'll help you. We can. I'm not going to be a prophet for you. I'm not going to tell you what God's will is for your life. Don't ask me that. I don't know, but I know that he knows, and I'll show you and help you how to figure that out and how to hear his voice. I want you to have a wonderful day. God bless you guys. Don't miss next week. Our prayer team is here. Thank you so much for being our prayer warriors. You need prayer today. You need healing. God is here for you. Have a wonderful day. God bless you guys. Bye-bye.